You're seeing here, and this is a bigger problem for society, is information inequality. Like, why did DeSantis do what he did? Why did Georgia wait so long? It's because they were listening to President Trump up until the last 5 or 6 days. They were watching Fox News. They were listening to Rush Limbaugh, and they were following conservatives on Twitter or social media, all of whom were downplaying this. So the information was there, but in that information bubble, they were basically getting a lot of sort of noise and news pollution. And it has huge consequences, because all of these steps, which you guys talk about on the show every day, could have been done months ago, certainly could have been done weeks ago.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020. Jim Vandehey from Axios. A lot of things should have been done. A lot of things I think people will think should have been done when we finally see the consequences of this freeze and unfreeze the economy maneuver. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this is that the same people, the same institutions that did not see essentially a meltdown of the economy in 2008 coming, now are telling you, don't worry, we can just start the economy, no problem. NBD, as the kids say. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But in terms of the pandemic preparations and what we've been doing here to fight against this virus, I've been saying to you, if it was known how scary this would be in terms of the virus's spread and how dangerous it is for people who get it, I do think there would have been a different approach. I think everyone admits that now. But how could we have known? The people that are saying this was obvious now are lying. They're lying. You know, there are people like me who will tell you there was bad information. We didn't know it was as terrible as it was going to be. Was anyone saying, here's the perfect test. Go back a month in time. Was anyone saying shut down the entirety of the U.S. economy minus some essential personnel and fields to keep us fed and alive? Was anyone saying that? Did you hear a single person? All these people, oh, yeah, that's where we are now. Shut it down. Shut it all down. That's what that's the Dr. Fauci saying he wants it at the national level, the whole country shut down for 2 weeks. And I keep seeing people that pop up with this. If we could only stay in place for 14 days, we would see a huge drop off in the virus. If no one left their home, if no one did anything for 14 days, we'd see a huge drop off in the virus. And this, I say, OK, let's say we had a 90% drop off in the virus. That would be amazing, right? So then if we stop doing the sit in place thing, we have what happened with the 10% of virus that's left. It starts to spread again. And you say, oh, well, we can contain that. And to that I would just say, how many times? How do we contain it? Go back into lockdown. We're going to be in this lockdown Groundhog Day scenario. Groundhog Day, the movie, right? Which if you haven't seen, it's a great one to watch, given that we're all kind of living the same day over and over now. But Vandehey here saying that the red states were slow to respond. I just find this annoying and untrue. The red states weren't slow to respond based on, first, as we know, the places that are the worst hit so far are generally the very, very blue states. And this isn't a political issue. This isn't, oh, you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, so you're more or less likely to get this. It's places with higher population density are getting hit hard. Higher population density and more international travel have been hit the hardest. With the one exception is Washington, where there is a population density and there were issues of international travel, but that was a little bit of an outlier comparatively to what we're seeing in New York and these other cities that are in very, very tough shape right now. So the red states, though, it's understandable based on everything we've been told by the experts, which we've been told so much. And I'm always amazed at people that get mad at me when I point out, if I say, hey, the experts have changed their mind on this, you're a bad person for pointing out that they've changed their mind. We are supposed to believe. They're almost like the high priests of social health now, or the high priests of our collective safety. And if you say, well, hold on, they have so many things they don't know. There's so many questions. It's like you're questioning their whole religion of science, which I'm certainly not doing. I want the science to save us here. We need the science to save us We need a treatment. People keep talking about vaccines. If we have to wait for a vaccine, I mean, society is going to change so much the next 18 months, and it's not vaccines that'll save us. It's treatment, right? What would you rather have? A guarantee in a year of something that they could inject you with that would protect you going forward from getting this virus, knowing that we have to be in lockdown effectively for the next 12 months, or a drug that can be given to people that come down with this, that brings the mortality rate, down to below where the common flu is, which is not where the disease is now, and also means that for those who aren't in the high risk category, you're probably going to be sick for 5, 6, 7 days, no hospitalization, and you're done. I think we all know the answer to this question, right? So the treatment is much more likely to be a game changer much more likely in the short term, because there is no short term for the vaccine, to be a game changer. So I'm all in on the treatments, man. I'm like, please, one of these things has got to work. Okay. But Van Hay's saying that this is a red state, blue state thing. It's just the numbers don't back this up. And it's understandable why Wyoming wouldn't feel the need to have the same degree of precautions as New York City or Chicago or Louisiana. And it's the densest parts of these cities, the places with the greatest concentration of people, where you're seeing the worst spread of the disease. Parts of Brooklyn and Queens that are very, very tightly packed have a lot, whereas there are, Staten Island, for example, is a more spread out, more diffuse borough. Here in New York, you have far fewer cases. And there are less people, but even on a per capita basis, human contact, constant human contact is a big component of this, meaning that you're getting close to people that could give you the disease. So I think that this, I keep saying red state, blue state, right, left paradigm that they're talking about isn't really accurate. And it's also just cheap to try and blame people who, what do they really think that the biggest names in right-wing media don't care about their listeners, wouldn't want to tell them. This is the greatest refutation that I've seen of the Scarborough. Oh, wait, we got another dumb Scarborough comment on this one. Joe Scarborough, whose whole game his whole existence is to be I don't know if he's a former Republican now, but for years and years and years, he's a Republican who really only has criticism for Republicans. I can't imagine waking up and doing a job that involves that much debasement of what I supposedly believe in. But this is where he is. Play clip 9.
It is true. What Jim's saying is, there's still so much garbage out there every day. And now a lot of the more extreme Trumpists are doing everything they can to try to defend the president and his extraordinarily slow start, trying to pretend that the intel committees, or that the intel community, his own intel community, warned him starting in January about this coming pandemic. It could be a pandemic. It could be very dangerous. The Department of HHS Secretary Azar was trying to see him for 2 weeks, and the president wouldn't see him. And when he finally saw him in the middle of January to talk about the pandemic, the president only wanted to talk about vaping.
What was going on in the middle of January? Oh, that's right. The psychotic lib Democrat impeachment of the president over nothing. Does anyone think that was really substantial enough for impeachment? Now that we see what is truly substantial as an issue of national concern, what that can look like, the quid pro quo phone call to Ukraine that was going to involve, Joe Biden, maybe through his, it was absurd. It's absurd. One thing about this pandemic that has, I think, been very clarifying is that the issues that we were told were of grave national importance before, the things we were being told we needed to really pay very close. This was absurd. This was laughable. The Russia collusion thing, all of this, now we know what's really important, and this is what this dwarfs those other issues. This is not even close. So, anyway, I sit here and I'm still flabbergasted. Fun word to say. By how ridiculous the media continues to be on all of these issues, and that they pretend that Donald Trump was such a slow start. But the best refutation that I've seen of Scarborough on this is if he knew, as he claimed yesterday, he knew this was coming. I've told you I didn't know it was going to be this bad. I've told you I didn't know that we would face a disease that if people get this, and they're in the high risk category in particular, the progression is vicious and it's brutal and it can kill people quickly. And I didn't know because how could I have known? They're claiming now that they did know. Well, I can tell you this, my friends. If I thought that this was going to shut down the economy, shut down the country, and it was going to be something that thousands and thousands of people would die from, and there was a chance that an early warning might have saved lives, who would I be if I didn't use my platform to tell as many people as possible to make those preparations? And here's the problem that Joe Scarborough has. He claims he knew this was coming, but he did nothing. But he did nothing to warn his audience. Yeah. Tucker Carlson flew down to Mar-a-Lago, as we know, and spoke to Trump and said, "Look, you've really got to get on this. This is worse than people are telling you." And Tucker gets all the credit for that, but he did it. He took that action. We know that, and that wasn't in January. It was a few weeks ago, but it was still very worthwhile. Joe Scarborough is just being a phony. He's just being a fraud. But the Trump hatred here hasn't receded. In fact, it's only more extreme. What you're going to see, and this is going to be troubling, among many other troubling things. But now, it used to be that the things they hated Trump for were entirely really rhetorical because Trump didn't start a war that was unnecessary. Trump, we didn't have some enormous mass casualty terror attack on his watch. But now the rhetoric is going to be Trump killed people with his ineptitude, his stupidity, whatever it may be. Trump has blood on his hands. They've been waiting for this moment. They've been just sitting around hoping that the opportunity will present itself for them to be able to accuse Trump of costing lives. People are dead because of Trump is going to be their rallying cry going in the election. No matter what he does, no matter what the facts show, it doesn't matter. People are dead because of Trump. This is the Bush lied, babies died of 2020 because these Democrats, the thought of Trump, this for them was a total black swan incident that derailed what would have been Trump easily sailing to re-election, and we all know it. Buffoonish Joe Biden was going to beat him? No way. Not with an economy that's fantastic and a country of relative peace. Now that we see what we're dealing with, as I was telling you, the libs were pretending things were bad 6 months ago, a year ago. The country, it's terrible, Trump. What a bunch of liars. Why would they have any credibility on any of this? The country was in fantastic shape 3 months ago. Well, yeah, basically. 6 months ago, a year ago, 18 months ago. And I was telling you that. Now, you got to give me credit for that. I was saying, guys, things are really good. Don't listen to anybody who says otherwise. And now people are like, oh, Buck, you were right. Yeah, of course. Got to remind myself I'm right about some things. As I've been telling you, I'm very angry that I didn't see this one coming more than I did. But I'll get it right going forward. That's for sure. I think... Bernie Sanders. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Sometimes I'm in a thought process and the exact right soundbite that I need appears on my list of sound here that producer Mark pulls. Play clip 10.
Instead of rallying the American people, instead of rallying the scientific community, instead of educating the American people about the need for social distancing and the other things that we have to do, I think his inaction has cost the lives of many, many Americans.
There you go. People are dead because of Trump. That's going to be the story. They're going to stick to it. People are dead because of Trump. You're going to hear this. People are dead because of Trump. So vote for Joe Biden, the guy that no one even knows if he's going to be able to just mentally process what he needs to do this job. But Trump, people are dead because of Trump. No one ever said that people were dead because of Obama with H1N1 with 15 or 20,000 Americans dying from that. No, that wasn't the claim that was made. Certainly not in the press. But already people are dead because of Trump. That's their re-election bumper sticker. And it's unfair. And that's a gentle way of putting it. It's BS. But they don't care. They want power. As we know, they want power.
president and the Senate Majority Leader are now suggesting that impeachment distracted the president from responding to the virus. Do you buy that at all?
I think that's an admission that perhaps the president and the majority leader cannot handle the job. We have a life and death situation in our country, and they should not try to hide behind an excuse for why they did not take action, but it does admit that they did not take action. But that's for an after-action review down the road. Right now, we have to work together to get the job done, and all of the statistics that we are hearing break every one of those deaths. All of that loss of life is tragic for our country.
Why does anybody listen to Nancy Pelosi on any of this? Isn't that a fair question to ask? Why does Nancy Pelosi? I mean, I know she's the Speaker of the House, so of course, but I mean, why does she have any credibility? I think the answer is clearly, if you're being fair, she doesn't have any credibility. She's the person that wanted to play games. She is the person who was trying to use this moment of absolute national crisis to advance a left-wing agenda while the American people are really hurting. And let's remember this. You know, I gave you before the induced coma of our economy analogy, which I think is actually a very solid analogy, which I just came up with. So there's that. But I gave you that. And remember that, you know, Nancy Pelosi and some of the other Democrats and Republicans on this, but they're the doctors that have to bring the person out of that coma. Right. They're involved in this. Their legislation, their ability to understand where the pain points are in the economy, and then the bureaucracy as well. They're kind of like the nurses in this analogy. They've got to get the checks to people. They've got to do all. So how exactly should we gauge that in this whole process? But Pelosi never missing an opportunity to make it partisan when it shouldn't be. Here's Pelosi saying that if impeachment was a distraction, Trump is admitting that he wasn't up for this. Oh, I'm sorry. This is like when if someone brings you into the office and says, explain to me why you shouldn't be fired right now. And then they say, hey, you know, you missed some of the TPS reports from today. I'm just, oh, yeah, of course you did. Of course you did. But Pelosi doesn't see it that way because she's ridiculous. Play 15 here.
Well, let's put that in perspective. Everybody says, oh, it's the biggest bill, this or that. It was comparable to what the president and the Republicans did with their tax scam to give 83% of the benefits to the top 1% in our country. That was over, with interest, it would close to $2 trillion bill that didn't create jobs, only added to the national debt. So let's not make it sound like this is something so exorbitant. It's for a much better purpose. It is investing in people. It is what is absolutely urgently needed. But again, we need more. And we can't just stop and say, well, since we have only spent as much as we spent on the tax bill, we can't spend any more. No.
Oh, there's so much to work through here.
I want to talk about this new talk of an infrastructure bill in Congress to get people back to work. What would that look like? Who would it put back to work? And are you taking into consideration green jobs, green infrastructure?
Yes. If we're going to look, the COVID-4 can probably be more forward looking at the economy. And if we're going to do infrastructure, because there's nothing better than getting the infrastructure going and going in a big, strong way, we need it big, we need it bold, and we need it futuristic, which means green. There's traditional infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways. We need that. But we also need new green infrastructure for the future. So we should do that.
So this is another component of what we're talking about. I before was saying to you that we're being told to take it on faith that they can do this, unfreeze the economy. I know I've repeated that a bunch, but just to put this in context for where I'm about to take us, we also should understand right now that while we are all deeply concerned, crisis is opportunity. We know this, always, right? Or if you are a Game of Thrones fan, which apparently a lot of people are, because producer Mark, you know that was as of at least a week ago, that was #1 streaming globally. Game of Thrones, HBO show.
Yeah, you mentioned it last week. That doesn't surprise me. People catching up.
Oh, I forgot that I mentioned that. Sorry, but yeah, no, if you want to just like spend 100 hours of your life not thinking about anything other than, Cersei Lannister versus the Starks. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty good show to watch. What the heck was I talking about a second ago? I got on the Game of Thrones tangent, and now I lost. Schumer, thank you. So Schumer is telling us, the next. Oh no, chaos is a ladder was what I was thinking about with Littlefinger. Chaos is a ladder, and that's and chaos. The Democrats certainly see as an opportunity to ram through things like the Green New Deal to get things that they want, because the federal purse is open now in a way that it never has been before, really. I mean, this has never been done. So there's going to be a sense that modern monetary theory is getting a tryout here in a weird way. Remember MMT? I think I've mentioned this before. MMT is the idea that a government can just create money, and as long as it keeps an eye on inflation and tries to control it, the government should just create money for whatever it thinks is essential and just do it. Now, some of you might say, well, but that's, and they say, well, government already does that. But there's always within these limitations of what is GDP, how much money is already in circulation, what is inflation. They're looking at all these different stats and trying to pull very specific levers about what they're going to do to the economy. MMT is just, we need $3 trillion of infrastructure, write the check. And then, figure it out. Do what you got to do. But write the check. We are in write the check status right now with the federal government, which is concerning to those of us who have been, for years now, for decades. Some people have been beating the drum. Ron Paul, perhaps most famously. There are others. The debt is a problem. The debt can consume us. Like this, and mathematically, we know they're correct. But we are going to have, there's the shorter term restart the economy challenge. And as I said, I think it'll probably be in June. That they even try, not full on, but that they even try to get things going. But there's the shorter term restart the economy challenge. And then there's the longer term structural challenge of not only the debt that we will have accumulated from really trying to do what is necessary here, get people their checks. Oh, and please, I've been meaning to say this. Those of you that are suffering right now economically from this, those of you whose businesses, I need to hear from you. I'm in New York. I have a very particular personal experience of this crisis, which is 99% focused on the virus, 1% focused on the economy. I'm talking about around me. Here in New York City, it's 90, and because we're losing so many people, it's 99% virus, 1% economy. I know in a lot of other places there's a different balance. And I need to hear from you. I need to hear from you in Austin. I need to hear from you in Los Angeles. I want to know what's going on out there. In Denver, how is Denver doing with this? I need to hear from you in Baltimore. How is the Baltimore area handling this? I need to hear from you all across the country. Please write in, especially if your business is shut down, if you've been furloughed, if you're out of work. And I mean this, I don't want 2 or 3 of you to let me know. I want a lot of you to let me know, because I can get from that mosaic, from that inflow of data from all of you across the country. It keeps me more in touch with what's really happening across. So yes, I read all of your notes and comments, and I try to do as much as I can to keep in touch with you virtually, so that I'm doing the best job I can on the show. That's for sure. But also, it really is part of my education. I don't know what's happening right now in San Diego. Tell me, right? So please do. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton, or the email is teambuck@iheartmedia.com. Instagram. I'm increasingly active on Instagram. It's just Buck Sexton. And I know a lot of you are on Instagram these days. You send me a message. And just if I don't reply, don't take that personally. We get hundreds and hundreds of messages coming in every day. I will read it, though. I will read it, even the mean ones. Producer Mark, that's your job, though. You have to read the mean ones.
I read all of them, Buck.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Even the ones that bring a tear to my eye, not tears of joy. So, okay, back to the economy. The problem here is that you're going to have this open checkbook phenomenon, and Democrats are going to say they're going to want to push for things that clearly aren't tied to this problem of the virus and the immediate economic effects. They want to do infrastructure. I think Trump has actually said he wants to do infrastructure too. We are repeating. We're going to have a whole debate not right now, but in the months ahead, a whole debate about the Green New Deal, but also the New Deal. Because part of the Green New Deal back and forth is going to be, what was the lesson of the New Deal? Was this something that we want to replicate? Liberals will say yes. I don't think that that's something that we should just concede, because I think they're wrong. So this is going to be quite a fight. But the trillions of dollars we're going to be told we have to spend on infrastructure, a lot of it will go to Green New Deal stuff. And this is the paradox that I can already see forming. And this is a prediction that I am very confident in. I would say high. If I was back in the CIA days, I'd say high confidence in this prediction, that the normal person response to what's going on now, if we're taking lessons learned about how we go forward and where we spend our time and energy and dollars when it comes to science, the normal person response would be, this is a real problem, which I have said. I've actually said this before on the show, that pandemic disease is a real problem. Antibiotic resistant bacteria is a real problem. Climate change is not a real problem, not one that needs to be dealt with as any kind of emergency. They will say, look at what happened because you didn't listen to us. And I know that's not the truth, but they'll say, look at what happened because you didn't listen to us on pandemic disease. You didn't deal with this as well as, say, the Obama administration did. They're going to rewrite the history of all of this. Now you must listen to us on the Green New Deal and get ahead of this so that we don't have the massive flooding and earthquakes and fire and brimstone and frogs falling from the sky, whatever. That's biblical stuff, so they wouldn't like that. But I mean, the other scary environmental things that they say are going to happen. So be prepared for that. This is where we are going. This is where we are heading in this discussion. And a huge debt makes it harder to get your economy going, especially if we have a normalization of interest rates. Right now, interest rates are effectively zero. We may go to negative interest rates pretty soon, although there's debate as to whether that will happen. But having a huge debt for the economy is going to be a drag on us getting going again. We know that. That's going to be a problem for us. Will it, are we going to face some kind of a collapse moment, though, or we lose the dollar as the reserve currency for the world? I mentioned this. I spoke to a very smart economic advisor, someone I've known for years, and he's a pessimist about a lot of things, and he's a conservative. For those of you saying, is this some like lib who works at Goldman Sachs or what is it, another Morgan Stanley or one of these places? No, he's a conservative. But he said he's not worried about this leading to. He doesn't say it's impossible that leads to collapse, but we are going to have to go through an economic cleansing of the market that is going to be brutal. There will be massive corporate bankruptcies. We already are seeing bailouts, but remember, those bailouts are supposed to be short-term fixes till the economy gets going again. This is actually exposing some structurally unsound companies that have been unsound for a long time. GM is likely to go bankrupt based on the projections that I've seen and based on what very smart people are telling me about this. Ford is likely to go bankrupt unless they get some kind of bailout. And keep in mind, GM was bailed out 10 years ago. And here we are again. Just as was said then, if you bail them out, but you don't make them change any structures to the union contracts or any of the, if they're not a competitive business model and they don't change, you're going to just need to do this again. And that's where we're going to be. Now, this is a little bit more down the line. I know we have more immediate and more imminent concerns to tackle, but there is going to be a massive reallocation of capital that occurs here. I'm bullish on the long term of the U.S. economy. I think we're going to be in great shape in 5 years. What I'm trying to avoid now is us being in really bad. What I want us to avoid is being in really bad shape for the next 2 to 3 years, which if we do this thing wrong, could happen. And that means massive unemployment, a huge increase in drug use and abuse and overdoses and suicides and depression and misery and all the things that people like me have been worried about with the Great Depression. Part 2. We'll see. There are always unintended consequences with all of these. If you just read Hayek, if you read The Road to Serfdom, every intrusion in the market the government then wants to follow up with a second intrusion to balance what it has imbalanced. And this is why it just gets deeper and deeper and more market control. The government is the economy right now, essentially, or is dictating the economy. And we are still the economy, but the government is making the major decisions. And you got to think that this is going to put us in a place where all of our old modes of thinking about this are going to have to adjust. I keep running out of ways to say that uncharted territory, staring into the abyss, all these somewhat cliched phrases that when you're doing 4 hours of extemporaneous radio every day, you're going to find yourself saying, even if you try to avoid them. It ends up happening to me, folks. I wish I could tell you that I've mastered the way of speaking as though I am writing with precision and clarity and never saying the things that I go, that's a cliche. But Schumer and Pelosi and the Democrats, they see an opportunity here for a massive remaking of the economy. And it's going to be very hard to stop them. Very hard indeed. They're going to point to all the spending that's going on. You're going to have corporate bailouts because otherwise you're going to have massive unemployment. There's going to be places where, whatever happened to libertarians, by the way, they're real quiet lately. I've been seeing people point that out. And I have a lot of libertarian friends, but no one really cares about legalizing marijuana right now. That's for sure. I know I'm going to get angry emails about that one. I'm just messing with you libertarians. You're cool. We're friends. But government intrusion, government expansion is on an unprecedented scale right now. And the Democrats, this is an opportunity for them. And they see it, and they see it right now, an opportunity to remake the biggest parts of the American economy in a progressive image. They're going to try to seize this opportunity. It doesn't matter how terrible the virus gets it doesn't matter how desperate the economy becomes. Remember, they are the party of the government is always the answer. And that's not going to change. And increasingly, it's going to be a challenge for people like you and me to make the case that the government is not always the answer, because right now we've been forced into, for now, the government is the answer. There's nothing else. What else are we going to do?
The Congress has got to act and act decisively to make sure that every American understands that they will be protected economically, that they're going to have the health care that they need, that we're going to use the Defense Production Act, which Trump has not utilized, to make sure that we have the equipment in our hospitals and our doctors' offices, whether they're masks, their gowns, their gloves, their ventilators, the ICU units that we need. We're going to be able to do that. But this requires an unprecedented effort in a bipartisan way from the United States Congress.
He's wrong. Does anyone care that he's wrong? No, of course not. It's Bernie Sanders. No one cares that he's wrong. The president has invoked the defense and is using the Defense Production Act now. So the Democrats offer up a Marxist. Yeah, that's who you want in charge when the economy's already in a tailspin. Let's put a Marxist or a guy who doesn't seem to really know where he is. Here is what Jimmy Fallon had to say about Joe Biden. Play 11.
Welcome to Tonight Show at Home Edition monologue. This is very exciting. Joe Biden is my guest tonight. He's actually pretty spry for 77. For example, he's going to Zoom with me tonight. That's right, Biden's been campaigning from home, but it's a little awkward. Every day he shakes hands with his wife Jill and asks where she's from.
It's a joke, I know, but it's only funny because we know that Biden does forget things and doesn't seem to know what's going on sometimes. I think it was yesterday that he said he had 5 grandchildren, and some journalists, of course not left-wing journalists, but some journalists pointed out, no, he has 7. How many of you who have grandchildren have recently forgotten how many grandchildren you have? I'm going to guess very few. But I do not say this to be mean about Joe Biden. I am on a mission to be as not mean. I mean, first of all, I think, if any, one of the biggest criticisms of me in this business, including from like former agents and people that I work, is that I'm too nice to people. I'm just too nice, which I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm that nice, but I'm too nice for this business is what I've heard from some folks. I think they just haven't spent that much time with me off air. But producer Mark, I threw myself off because I was like, Mark's going to say something any minute here. but I'm trying to be fair to it's more fair than ever right now, and I don't want to be mean about Joe Biden. It's just that we're always told that if Joe Biden was in charge, more people would be alive. That's a bold claim, and it just doesn't square up with reality. There's no reason to believe that that's true based on what I'm seeing, so I have a hard time just letting it all slide and let it all go. See, with Bernie Sanders, you have somebody who doesn't understand the economy. That's not what you want when you're going into an induced depression. And with Joe Biden, you have somebody who seems like he doesn't always really know what's going on around him. That's just bad in any crisis.